On this episode, I want to talk about the muse and kind of how to channel it, how to inspire it. And I do think it is almost like a kind of separate part of yourself. I've said before that I think the soul and your personality are two separate entities. I think inspiration is as well. Genuinely ask yourself, how hard are you trying? So now, if you're trying to create stuff in that, genuinely ask yourself, well, how hard are you trying to create? And that don't mean sit there straining like you're constipated. It means, like, how often are you actually making time for yourself? Are you making notes of the good thoughts that you have? Like, are you putting the value in the thoughts that you have? And some people can just sit there and be like, right, I'm going to sit here until you show up. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of time in my life. I've got a kid, I've got responsibilities,
Yeah.
I've got bills to pay.
Yeah.
I ain't sitting around just waiting on you.
Yeah.
Do you know?
There's so many ways that you can express yourself, and if you have that muse kind of knocking at you, there's so many ways that you can actually allow that to do its thing. Your donut addiction.
You're not writing that book.
I can't write that because I'm not.
Maybe how to get a donut addiction. You can definitely write that.
Nah, brother, you're born with them.
This
They're
ain't
kind of like me and carbs. Like, don't deprive your muse.
when
You have more time to be more creative at younger years, though, because you don't have anywhere near the level of stress and responsibility you have as an adult.
be a kid and just escape and just see the kind of fun in life if you let yourself. But if you don't kind of make time for that, it's never gonna show up.
How many original ideas are there that are actually left?
You got Dave, did you know for?
I do.
Do you know what? I genuinely started to look forward to these bits.
I do, and this one is a lot more innocent than the last episode.
Oh.
So, do you know what a collective noun is? It's just like a name you give to multiple of the same thing.
Like an umbrella term.
Essentially, so like, I don't know, like if you had like if you have like a big group of fish, you call them a shoal.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's some really interesting ones that I find hilarious, but also really weird. And it's a stem. I already knew a couple in my head, but it's a stem from my lovely book that I use when I come on the show. And then they have a thing about a group of rhinoceroses. Do you know what you'd call a group of rhinos?
Oh, damn it, I've heard this one before. Now go on,
It's a crash. A crash of life.
appropriately. Quick tangent about rhinos. This is going to build off something that you actually mentioned on another episode, funnily enough.
You go on like I remember anything I said on the previous episode. It's like
You'll
I
remember
even
this.
just shut down.
You'll remember this because it was about your heritage.
I go into a fetal position and kind of shake it off.
So what is the animal of the country that you originate from, essentially?
The unicorn.
Right. So I went down this rabbit hole before that. The term unicorn isn't derived from a horse with a horn on it like everybody thinks. It's actually about rhinoceros. So there's a bicorn and a unicorn rhinoceros. So that's basically what unicorn is a single horned rhino. But through like mythology and this and everything else, it's been kind of like contaminated over time to now into a pretty pony with a horn on its head instead of a beastie like unicorn or a crashing one running towards you.
Interesting.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt your.
It's all right. But the nouns are quite interesting because there's normally a reason why they were named that way. It's like the rhino one, I actually looked it up, and it's basically to do with the fact there's obviously a lot of them running at the same time, but they can't see very far ahead. So they would typically just crash. So yeah. But there's a few favorites I have. So like off the top of my head, I know like a group of owls. That's Parliament. They're known as a Parliament of owls. I don't know why.
Fair enough.
My favorite one, those crows.
Go on.
It's a murder of crows.
A murder of crows.
Yeah, it sounds so good.
Then again,
they're so like I find crows like strange beings. Anyways, I like crows, but there's something about them that's kind of like.
Hold up, and this is going to make me sound or look very stupid, or probably both. But I always have this thing that confuses in my head: crows and ravens, two different birds, right?
Correct. You'll see crows way more. Crows are normally the big kind of black birds that you see slapping pigeons up for some crumbs on the street, or picking out the eyes of a dead squirrel on the road.
Yeah, and ravens.
They're bigger normally the Tower of London. Normally, if they fly away, everyone goes, "Well, the end is nigh. The end is nigh. We're dead."
But I don't know. They're obviously just two. Like,
ironically, it does bring me on to the next one. What's a group of ravens called?
I have no idea. Colt?
An unkindness.
An unkindness.
An unkindness of ravens.
That one makes no.
And I think I saw basically this one was about the fact that they basically kicked their young out of the nest really early.
Oh, deep.
The people were like, well, that's unkind, so they became an unkindness of crows.
That's ridiculous.
Right, it's so random.
Some of these need rebranding. Like,
frogs,
go on.
an army.
Why do frogs get a cool one?
I have no idea, bro. Salamanders,
Go on.
a maelstrom. That sounds so sick. It's a maelstrom of salamanders.
It's definitely a mouthful.
You don't want a mouthful of those, bro. Oh, there was another one, but lobsters. this one makes no sense to me. Apparently, a risk. A risk of lobsters. Like, why are we calling them a risk? It doesn't
It's
make
spelled
any
the
sense.
same or any adjustments or?
No, it's spelled exactly the same. R-I-S-K. Penguins, you might know.
Go on.
A colony. Parrots, I'll call it a pandemonium of parrots.
Yeah.
Which is probably accurate. I mean, that's what they tend to do. You can also call magpies a murder of magpies as well.
See, I get with the crows because ain't they normally around like they're like scavenger animals or whatever else.
They
So like
very much
if
are.
there has been a murder or whatever else or a dead animal, they're probably going to be lots of them looming around or whatever else. So
Yeah, they're known as a murderer, but also you could call them a horde of crows, which explains everything you need to know about them, really.
Mm.
I think if I saw a bunch of crows flying at me, I probably would brick it. I'd probably want to run away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just like how the wolves have like just a pack and it's so generic. It's like, well, yeah, there's a pack, but then there's so many animals where it's like giraffes is a tower of giraffes. That's just mocking it, isn't it? Just mocking it. Like, what's we call these guys? I mean, there's more than one of them. Tower sounds.
That doesn't make sense in the way that like they don't get any taller the more of them that there are. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Group of monkeys, a rump of otters. Otters are bad animals, though.
oh, I do like them. They're
No, they're
cool.
bad animals, bro.
They're cool.
They're rapey. They're bad animals.
Bro, most animals are rapey.
Nah, they're disgusting.
Fair enough.
A conspiracy of lemurs.
How many animals do you have that to go through to me?
I mean, I might be using a website that I discovered. My last one is my favorite one, which is a gang of buffalo. If you see a whole bunch of buffalo, you wouldn't really want to go approach it, would you?
Mm.
You'd probably be like,
Yeah.
and a cauldron of bats.
A cauldron of bats.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I suppose.
There's probably a whole bunch of reasons why they are named that way. Normally there is a reason.
But as well, like,
I just find it interesting.
I think sometimes people just give things a name and then they're just like, yeah, just move on. That's what it is now. Like, we can go back through and we can make better names for some of those things. And
You're not gonna beat a murderer.
bro, it's one of those funny things. Like when you hear about like the spelling of dyslexia, can we not change that to make it easier for the people with the condition? Do you know what I mean? Like, there are things in the dictionary and things in the human language that should be adjusted. And like at some point we need to go back and correct these things. And that's amongst them in my opinion. But anyway, moving on. Fancy hypothetical?
Go on then, mate.
And I've got like flashbacks to last week's episode, but I'm gonna hope for a more yeah. If Dave could be an inanimate object for 24 hours, what is he being? Ooh. You have perception, but you can't like feel as if like you don't have skin and all of that stuff. So you have perception, you have awareness around you, but you don't have essentially like feeling or whatever else. So like if you was a chair, you could feel that you was being sat on, but you wouldn't feel as if it was like somebody giving you a hug, for example.
So I mean, perception kind of screws with me. Because I was gonna say something like an airplane, because I think it'd be kind of sick to see what it looks like from the front.
You could be an airplane.
Because I ain't gonna be a pilot. Bro, that's cold. I can feel that. I don't want to feel that, bro.
No, but again, like you have no sense of like.
Well, like a submarine would be kind of sick if you could see things. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, so like you'd be able to like perceive your environment and everything else, but like I say, you have no like sensory organs or whatever else. So you could go to the bottom of the ocean. It's like the same sense of like if somebody was like, yeah, but you can't hold your breath, so you can't be a submarine. Well, I'm not a human. I'm an inanimate object. Do you know what I mean? Like, so for me, it would be like a gargoyle, just perched above a city, just in one spot, just watching the world go by for a day. Because as a human, everything's hustling and bustling, everything's fast paced and da da da. Like to just be high above the city, just observing for a day, I think would be quite interesting. Like the amount you would see, and I mean, no, in my life I'll get a bird doodle on me, but part of the experience, I guess. I, I do think it's interesting to like again, like you can't do anything in the world or anything else. You can just be. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Even though maybe something with like really out there, like a seashell or something. You just hit the sea for like a whole 24 hours. Watch sunrise, sunset, just chill.
Imagine being the moon for 24 hours. That'd be kind of nuts.
You'd see the whole world.
You'd probably see more than that. I mean, you'd be able to tell if it's flat or not. Supposedly. Anyway, should we wrap this up and go into the main plot? Don't worry, the animation will do that.
Oh. Wow, a joke.
What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Chasers podcast. I'm your host, John.
And I'm a unit.
A what?
A unit.
You really had to pronounce the T there, bro, because I missed it completely. I literally just heard, I'm a uni. I'm like, what?
You need a hearing.
I mean, you're the size of a universe, but...
I'm a unit.
Fair enough. I'll give you that.
So special.
And?
Meep, meep.
No comment. On this episode, I want to talk about the Muse and kind of how to channel it, how to inspire it, and I do think it is almost like a kind of separate part of yourself. I've said before that I think the soul and your personality are two separate entities. I think inspiration is as well. And I think it's going to be interesting to talk about this with you, considering, especially if we dial the clock back 2 years, you struggled with like creativity and getting inspired and everything else.
Sure did.
But
Still
now,
do to a degree. Still do to a degree. I would say.
Even with like your own stuff now, you're starting to build up little series, you're starting to have different ideas and things like that. So like your journey into finding out how to become creative and how to bring out that side of yourself is going to be quite interesting to myself. Like for me, I've always been around, even when I was a kid, music or building stuff or art so I've always had an air of creativity in my life. It's not been like a cold start essentially. But for yourself, it seems like you've had more of that cold start. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like you've realised quite into adulthood that you like creating stuff and everything else, and it's something that you haven't really made time for. So you've had to go on this whole kind of learning journey of like, oh, well, what is it like to create? And then being your own critic and this, that, and everything else. Like that whole roller coaster is like even I done back in school an early art GCSE because I liked art and I was decent at art. But no, if I try and sit down and paint with little one, I'm in such a rush. Whatever I paint looks worse than what she's doing, and she's a 4-year-old. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's no criticism to her, but like it's a heavy criticism on me. Whereas if I sit down and I take a smaller brush and I take my time and I think about it and I slowly let the image come, then it at least looks maybe like a 5-year-old did it. Like, this is slight improvement. So I think the same happens when you're trying to like get inspired and everything else. Like you think of those like grandiose things and like, oh, what can I do in the final product and that? But it's that taking that time of like showing up and putting in that work and seeing if the muse shows up. The muse isn't always going to show up. But if you always show up for that muse, at least when they do show up, you've got a chance of making magic. Do you know what I mean? Like,
True. I think the one thing I've come to realize is that I didn't realize this a couple of years ago when I said that I wasn't creative. I think everyone has something that they are creative with. They just don't really shine a light on it because they just assume it's them and that's it. You know what I mean? They don't assume it's anything different. So like I can be quite creative with the spoken word and how I use words and how I do things like how I talk. I can be very creative with that. But I just brush that off as well, I know how to talk properly, isn't it? But it's not necessarily one of those things. Like some people actually have a wave of words quite literally and can use them really creatively to do whatever they need to, right? So it's not something you really think about because it's just conversation, right? It's something we take for granted. I think the thing that comes later is when I think the thing that's quite helpful for me is essentially like how you edit and stuff like that brings things to life, right? So I don't need to really stress about that too much. I kind of do that as I go along. The creative part is, for me, is out on the golf course is what do I say and how do I do things, and I just kind of run with it. If that makes sense, like I'm an idiot by trade. So by letting that flow, I am being creative. Again, to me, it's just being me. But the outsider looking in will go, actually, well, no, you're trying to do something different. You're trying to make people laugh. You're trying to be informative. So therefore, you are being a bit more creative with how you go about things. And I think the big thing for me was also just not looking at things logically. Like the logic stops with, I'm going to go to this course, and this is my rough plan. Okay, what's your rough plan? I'm going to play 9 holes of golf. Right. But
But I think,
creativity comes with. There's also a random nature to what I do, right? It's kind of hard to predict what I'm going to do because my golf game isn't great right now. So it's kind of hard to predict where the ball's going to go.
but I think there is that kind of there's that nugget of like wisdom in what you just said there, where it's like nuggets. Um,
Please. Right. Sorry.
there's only so much restriction you can put on that muse. So like even for myself, like no matter what I'm sitting down to create, whether it is stuff for the pod or just private like creations and projects I'm working on in the background or whatever else, if I sit there and I try to put like rules and restrictions about what can be created and everything else, I'm making a very small like pathway or channel for the muse to kind of enter through.
Yeah.
Whereas if I just sit down and call, I'm just going to think and I might put some music on and I might go down this way for a little bit and then that way. And I just start to kind of relax a little bit and I start to kind of like loosen myself up straight away. Literally that like creative pathway like dilates and I instantly, I might not be thinking about the thing that I want to be thinking about, but I'll think about something else which kind of intrigues me and then that ignites another thought and then that ignites another thought. But all of that comes from just relaxing and just kind of letting go a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, like you said, when you go on the golf course, it's very loose rules. Whereas if you're like, cool, I need to get this many strokes per video, this, that, da 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 da.
The stuff like
Exactly.
no, that's the thing. So I think for me it helps knowing that I have just a basic outline. As I said, like the last series that I just done, the Wheel of Doom series, where the whole idea was I spin a wheel and that club is a club I use for the hole. Okay, that's what I like.
So
The rest is up to me.
So what inspired even that Wheel of Doom?
Do you know I've seen loads of videos before where people do like different things with like a random wheel, right? Like they'll do all sorts in terms of like there's one channel done like a Wheel of Not Ideal where they actually have household objects they use on the golf course instead of the golf club. There's ones where you'll have two people playing like two teams of two and they'll both hit shots and you'll spin that wheel on whose shot you take and sometimes you get the worst one, sometimes you get the good one. It's just a luck thing, right? So I just figured how can I interpret that for a one-man band? Well, quite easy. I'm going to hamstring myself by, well, I was going to choose my club, but it's not going to help me out really because I can't hit with any of them anyways. But there's some holes where I really don't need that club right now and I've got it. And I have a new idea to use that same format as well.
But see, again, like, so simply by now, if you just sat there and been like, right, brain, you need to come up with an original thought, this, that, and everything else, straight away, that would have been discredited. Yeah. Whereas because you've allowed yourself for room, repurpose other people's ideas. Like, I don't think there's a taboo in that. Do you know what I mean? Because you're making something your own.
I think you have to understand how many original ideas are there that are actually left. Which is don't know, a very philosophical question. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, and there isn't an exact answer to it, right? But in the grand scheme of things, most of the time now, people will probably be likely to rehash an idea versus create their own original. The world is too big a place for things to potentially have not been done. You know what I mean? Unless it's something completely bloody wild. But really unlikely that it hasn't already been done. I mean, there's literally a channel that sent free golf balls into the atmosphere and had them drop back down and then played them live. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that have been done that I believe there's a greater percentage of things that have been done. Assuming we're talking about what is possible right now,
Yeah.
not forever.
I know.
I think there's a greater percentage of has been done compared to hasn't been done.
Nah, see,
And I think that will change as things go on, as time goes on. But I mean, right now, in the confines of what is very possible, I think it skews personally. And I think what's left is what you just said, which is okay, I like that, but I'll do it my way. And that's when you start
yeah.
getting into, well, as far as I'm concerned, this hasn't been done because I haven't done it this way. You know what I mean?
I think there's a little bit of like observation bias in that, like kind of like this thing where they say like, oh, the world's overpopulated or whatever else, but then there's places on this earth that you can walk for 3 days and not see another
I
single
was about to
soul.
say, when the Sahara Desert has like, a 20-story
So
skyscraper on it, then I believe the world's
I, I,
overpopulated.
I think what you're saying is true to the extent that all of the thoughts kind of in like mainstream society, this, that, and everything else, because everybody's essentially human centipeding and like regurgitating the previous information, this, that, and everything else. Like there's very few people kind of live an isolated life enough that they can have a genuine original thought, but then they're in the world enough to be able to share that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, but I do think there is a lot that hasn't been done and a lot to kind of think about and everything else. I just think that people see how somebody else, like take like e-commerce and all of that stuff, for example. Like a couple people made some money on it, and then people see it's something that's doing well, and then everybody jumps on it, and then it's not beneficial for anybody. And then same happens with Airbnb and this, like as soon as that flood comes in, it kind of takes away all of the kind of abundance for a little bit and everything else, but it comes back in over time. So like in terms of like content, there's loads of content that can be made, but only so much is popular right now. Do you know what I mean? Like there's now even on TikTok, I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed the kind of STEM category that they've got now,
Yep.
and I only recently noticed that. But it's a whole new area where it's going like, okay, we're not just going to be for mindless scrolling or whatever else. Yeah, there is that here. But if you want something a bit more focused, a bit more intentional, there's that here as well. So now all those people that were saying, oh, I'm trying to make stuff that is quality and I don't just want to be on camera shaking my bum or getting slapped with a rap or whatever else. Now there is actually a place for those people in that. But again, it's kind of waiting for those tides to change. Not everything fits at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I certainly do.
So yeah, I do think it is something that has an air of truth to it, but I do think there is a lot of original thoughts still to be had out there. If people are just brave enough to have them and stop thinking that somebody else's idea is going to pay them off better or quicker than their own. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I still think it's a tricky one, though. I mean, at the end of the day, most of us are in some kind of employment. Most of us probably full-time employment. So essentially, you're paid not to allow that muse to thrive.
hmm,
You know what I mean? Like as we said earlier, right? The muse is normally distracted,
yeah,
so it can't flourish. It can't do its thing. And I felt that. Like obviously, I'm now coming to a stage where it's actually starting to go, hey, we got some ideas, man. Let's go do some stuff. But most of the time, you are doing something where you can't really get out of it at this point. So you're kind of throttling it.
hmm.
So I guess it's quite tricky to actually, like as you said, like slow down.
So,
Use that brush with the finest stroke and actually just do your thing.
and this is the thing. I think it's like, so when the muse first turns up, it's so easy to lose sight of it. And it's like, oh, damn, I have to take care of this thing. Like, I've got to give it nutrients. Like, okay, cool. Well, if I want new ideas, I have to feed it some ideas so it can build new stuff. And again, doing that is a learning curve and it takes time to learn. Like, okay, cool. I do actually have to sit with my thoughts and I don't have to be in a rush to pick up my phone the moment I've got a spare bit of time. Sit with my thoughts, think about my day, think about tomorrow. And again, look, I'm somebody that overthinks with the absolute best of them. So, like with anything, there's a level of moderation. If you're sitting there all day thinking about tomorrow, you've got an imbalance. But if you've got a little bit of 5 minutes to be like, okay, cool, what do I want to do? Like, do I want to plan for tomorrow? Do I want to set anything up for tomorrow to make my day a little bit easier? Do I want to set my work clothes out for myself or whatever else? Like, Little things like that. Like I said before, what are you doing for yourself in 6 months? You can play that game a lot closer to home. What are you doing for yourself tomorrow? And then tomorrow, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and he said a really interesting thing where it's like when the seasons change, and like he's changing about his jackets and everything else, he will put a couple £100 in his jacket pocket and just forget about it. So then next time he goes out in that jacket in 6, 8 months, or maybe even a year or whatever else, there's just a little surprise in there for himself. Just go, oh, there's some free money. Nice. Because everybody likes that feeling. So why not be the person to give yourself that feeling?
Hmm.
Do you know
Well,
what I
yeah,
mean?
I like that.
So you might not have a couple £100 to do it with or whatever, but you put a £20 in there or whatever else, you feel like, oh, sweet. Like, there's ways where you can kind of be your own happiness in that sense. And sometimes you have to be your own inspiration. But that's not always going to be the case. So understanding that, like, sometimes you need to pick a little bit outside of life. Sometimes you need to be alone a little bit. Sometimes you need to go down a whole new avenue in life that you've never experienced, or talk to a new person, or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many catalysts for inspiration, but the one thing is, if she's not going to come to you.
No, so.
So, like, you've got to make room for it, and you've got to put in the work to seek it. Otherwise, it's never going to come, huh?
I agree with you, but I also think there is a part of it where sometimes it just comes to you.
Yeah.
Especially if you're kind of wired how I am, where you never really think about these kind of things. You just think, oh, I'm not really creative, is what it is. There is a point where you get slapped upside the head by it. Because you'll find yourself doing something quite random. Like, I've gone on this path now of doing content creation, playing golf. It's quite random compared to where I was.
Mm.
But there's something obviously in me that went, yeah, we need an outlet. Like, we need a different outlet from what we're doing.
Mm.
And I think there's some people like that, where we're not really wired that way, but all of a sudden we just feel compelled to try something. And then we start unlocking things and going, oh, wait a minute. This thing's pretty cool, man. Like, actually, I do want to be a bit more creative. Or, yeah, I do want to draw. Or, yeah, I want to write. Or, I want to stitch things together. Or whatever it is. Like, there's
But
an
then,
outlet in there that's coming out and going,
even
on.
that all started, if you dial the clock back, with you wanting to explore and learn something new, you wanting an outlet for yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, so again, there was a level of inspiration from that. There was a cause and a catalyst for that. It didn't come from nowhere. Like, it's easy to think like, oh yeah, I enjoy golf, so I ended up making a golf trip. But when you slow down and you get that finer brush, you're like, okay, but you've done that for a little bit, and then you realize you really enjoyed it, and then you see how that tied in with other dreams that you had, and then you see about how that could benefit other people and what you want, and it all slowly snowballed over time. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then so I was having a similar kind of conversation to this the other day, and the only way I'm going to describe the first thing that you were saying there in terms of like sometimes you just get lucky with the muse. It's like sometimes thinking is like throwing a ping pong ball at a massive white wall with one hole in it. And you could throw that ball a million times and miss. But on the millionth and seventh time, it goes through that hole. You didn't aim it any more than you did any of the other times or whatever, but just out of sheer numbers, it went through that hole. And then that hole leads down on a path that knocks down a bunch of dominoes and this, that, and everything else. Like, sometimes you do just get lucky, but you've then still got to be conscious enough to be like, okay, I want to stay on this path now. If you was like, okay, cool, I found a way that is an outlet, is something that I enjoy, and then you're like, right, I'm going to try basketball next week. And then you just let it go. And then you're like, yeah, there's nothing here. You actually have to, like, again, slow down and be present and be like, wait, there is something worth it here. There's something I actually enjoy here, and I want to put more effort and more work into this.
Definitely.
But as well, I think it relates into what we said in another episode about it doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. But if you show up for it, it will eventually show up for you.
Yeah, I think that also like comes into like consistency and continuously turning up, like we spoke about so many times before.
But this is why, like, I think all of these things intertwine together. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're constantly showing up, it's like, I don't. The only thing I can compare it to is like, imagine there was a mystery bus that, if it showed up, it would take you to your dream. And this special bus would show up every now and then, but never have a time or place. But if you showed up at this spot and you caught it, all your dreams would come true. You good, bro?
Yeah, I'm good. Oh, I don't know why I got a case of the giggles suddenly. Sorry.
No, but if they want to find out, they should sign up to the Patreon. Maybe some of our inside jokes will come out a little bit more on there. I don't know. But, you know, if things are behind a paywall,
everybody's got a prize.
literally, everybody's got a prize. And, you know, if there's a bit of a paywall in the way, maybe me and Dave can be a little bit more forthcoming with our inside jokes. But for now, Dave will keep his laughing to himself.
Tell you, when we start dropping things on Patreon, there's going to be so many C-bombs.
Yeah.
Like, the amount of Dave rants that are going to be on that Patreon. Ridiculous, by the way.
Yeah.
It's going to be like a whole section where I just walk in and just start ranting. It's like,
bro, you gotta think, John Unfiltered, yeah, that's going to be dangerous. But to not get too off topic, if your only responsibility to find this special bus was to show up,
yeah,
most people are like, well, I don't know when it's going to show up. I don't know so they talk themselves out of it even before it starts.
Definitely.
Whereas if they show up to that bus stop and they've put in that effort and they're consistent with it or whatever, they at least stand a chance in finding it.
Just waving down the special bus and getting on it.
Pretty much. Maybe licking a window or two. Like, it's just that thing. Like, there's so much of life that is just showing up. Like, even if you're moaning that you're single and this, that, and everything else, okay, cool. When was the last time you went out meeting people and socializing? Like, have you shown up to the dating scene, or are you just moaning that you're single or this, that, whatever else?
Show up to the dating scene.
Probably not. But
Wild West, man.
Again, if you're jobless or whatever else, and you're like, there's no jobs out there, well, how often do you show up looking for a job or this, that, or whatever else? There's job fairs, there's this, that. Like, genuinely ask yourself, how hard are you trying? So now, if you're trying to create stuff in that, genuinely ask yourself, well, how hard are you trying to create? Like, and that don't mean sit there straining like you're constipated. It means, like, how often are you actually making time for yourself? Are you making notes of the good thoughts that you have? Like, are you putting the value in the thoughts that you have? And all of these various aspects where it encourages the muse to show up and it makes it easy for the muse to show up. Like, there are little tricks, like, some people can just sit there and be like, right, I'm going to sit here until you show up. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of time in my life. I've got a kid, I've got responsibilities, I've got bills to pay.
Yeah.
I ain't sitting around just waiting on you. Do you know what I mean? So, like, if it is a freaking good song, if it's a bit of a conversation with somebody to, like, start that ball rolling and get my mind in that kind of gear, or whatever it is, it might be a drive. Do you know what I mean? Like, a drive down the road and look at the world a little bit and kind of do some people watching and kind of get some inspiration from people.
I think the other thing as well is there's so many ways to be creative now.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many ways that you can express yourself, and if you have that muse kind of knocking at you, there's so many ways that you can actually allow that to do its thing. You know what I mean? Like, maybe, like, I love music, but maybe you want to try and create your own. Okay. Maybe you want to go and do things like podcasts. Maybe you do want to do content creation. Maybe you're just really good at drawing, or maybe you want to get better. Maybe you're just really good at writing. Okay. Write a couple of chapters, see what it looks like. I think especially that last one, because if you actually have a thing for, like, writing, and you write a couple of chapters, you have no idea where that goes. That could go anywhere, man.
Do you know what? I think
one there?
it comes into, like, the value of self. Like, most people don't think, like,
get someone to read it.
Bro.
Get someone to listen to it. Like, generally, like, because you just never know things like that. You could, you know what I mean?
As well, like,
I'd love to write a book.
Yeah, but there's also, like, a sense of
how to be a professional donut. About Big Dave. My pen name. Original, isn't it?
But
how to beat a donut addiction.
You're not writing that book.
I can't write that because I'm not.
Maybe how to get a donut addiction. You can definitely write that.
Nah, brother, you're born with them.
I mean, not all of us.
There's a picture of me at, like, around 18 months trying to eat, like, a chocolate eclair that's the size of pretty much my body at that point.
I disagree with that, because I've seen your baby pictures and there is more body than there is eclairs on this planet.
Fair enough. But the eclair was quite big for baby size.
Yeah.
I ain't no average baby.
Never.
Yeah. I did ask if I actually ate, and I got told, "No, you idiot." And I was just like, "Well, no wonder why I had addiction to carbs the rest of my life, and I was deprived from a young age." That's why I have problems. You know what I mean? I turned 18 and something inside me just went, "Oh, deprived. I will never be deprived again, brother."
You didn't get to 18 before thinking that, brother.
No, straight about 30. Straight chicken shop.
Like, oh. Again, this
They're
ain't,
kind of like me and carbs. Like, don't deprive your views.
bro. Has there ever been a slim day? Sorry to go on this tangent, but now I have to ask
I was born circa 5 kilos. No.
because, like,
This is the slimmest Dave has ever been.
damn, damn, damn. Right.
Working for you, boy. What can I say?
Yeah, no. Again, like, it's simply an idea of like perceptions. Like,
I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. I
see,
feel like I'm the most motivated I've ever been. And I eat tacos most nights.
even for like my young years, like probably say like to 7 or 8, I was fairly like slim, skinny, or whatever else. It wasn't until like all of the X stuff kicked off and all of the friggin' drugs and this, that, and everything else, where it's like, whoo, on the friggin' merry-go-round of weight gain. But it was always that kind of like chasing, chasing cycle. And I never, once I got that weight, I never lost it. But it weren't, it weren't always there kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So like, I knew what it was like to see my toes at one point, but to like, yeah, I don't know. It's mad because I think that I would never change how I was because I think having a bit of extra meat on your bones as a kid allows you to grow a bigger frame, which for a guy is freaking wanted as an adult and shit. Like, you don't want to be a wiry man that can get blown off with a strong breeze. Like, but even still, like, there's that air of like, I don't know, stigma. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I'm going on a massive tangent here,
Yeah, really are.
but like, bro, I tried so hard to shift weight when I was a kid and that, and it just never happened. Like, and now I do not try at all, and it's just running away from me at times. At least it feels like that. And it's like the stress well, not so little John went through to freaking burn calories and that. Like, I used to take like bike rides after school and before dinner every single day. Just, you cramping up? You cramping up?
I just mentioned, bro. We're even on camera at that point.
I know, but again, I've just got this going in my peripheral, so I have to address it.
I'm cough, not me.
Fair enough. But yeah, like I tried like hell to kind of shift that, but it never went. And now, like I say, like
Now we're screwed.
you have been the whole time, to be fair. Um, yeah, I don't know, like it was literally just pedaling. But yeah, I don't know, like I never really thought about like what young Dave would look like. And now it's kind of sent me on a little kind of thing of a rabbit hole because now I'm just like, well, I remember what little John was like and all of the stresses that he went through and da 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 da.
I have more hair, a fatter face, and less beard.
Yeah, Dave with no beard is a sight to behold.
Not really. Dave with a beard is a sight to behold. Not Dave without a beard.
I mean, both for similar reasons. Both deadly horrific. But, yeah. Anyway. Enough of that tangent, but yeah. Like, it is, it's interesting to think back to like different points of life and that. Like I say, like, those younger years when, like, I probably was more creative at those times. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I think
when,
you have more time to be more creative at younger years, though, because you don't have anywhere near the level of stress and responsibility you have as an adult.
mm,
Typically.
yeah, but at the same time, like the stubborn part of my head's just like, yeah, but why can't you have the same? Like, again, I know you've got to adult and do all of the responsibilities of life and that, but why can't you have the same kind of like vigor and imagination of life in adulthood as you do childhood?
I suppose I think it's just conditioned that way. You know what I mean? As adults, all we really know is that we go higher educational work to eventually be at more work, to earn money, to eventually maybe get your own place, start a family, that kind of thing. That's it, really. You're not really conditioned to go and be as creative as you want and pursue what you want.
Yeah, but that's not everybody's idea of happiness. Like, not
I
everybody.
don't think there's anyone's idea of happiness deep down. Being
But
real.
again, like, it's just one of those perpetual lies in society. Like, you're told this is what will make you happy, so go pursue this, and then people are miserable pursuing it, but they're like, yeah, I'll be happy once I get it, and then they get it, and they're still miserable, and they're like, damn, you lied to me, and they're just like, yeah, society, give me your tax money. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I, I don't know. I think if you make time for it, like, again, you can go on a adventure and be a kid and just escape and just see the kind of fun in life if you let yourself. But if you don't kind of make time for that, it's never gonna show up. Like, again, like you said earlier on, you could throw that ball at the wall and get through the whole one in a millionth opportunity or whatever else. But do you really want to hold your breath for that one in a millionth, or do you want to go to that bus stop every day and hope your special bus turns up to take you to your friggin' dreams? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Well, the special bus.
literally, choo choo.
Triple, triple.
Got this bad boy up because I've gone on enough tangents.
Yeah, boy.
Do you have any seeds for this episode, or shall I drop it?
He always try to see, not me.
I know, but I like to give you the opportunity, so it gives me an extra second to think. And that's how you cut out dead air, folks. The seed for this episode is give yourself the time to have an original thought. That means enough time away from screens, books, other influences of information. Sit with yourself for a minute. You don't need to escape your own existence. Like, you are with you 24/7, 365. So get comfortable in that skin. Understand what makes it happy. Understand what makes it sad. Understand what inspires you. Like I say, I know if I chuck on some old school rock music, my mood is going to increase fairly quickly. And then my brain's going to start going and I'm going to start thinking about life and thinking about what I can do, what I want to do. Everything's kind of going to gear up and just start to kind of chug along in a good sense. So I know there are things that I can do that engage my mind and engage me. So find out what engages your mind and what engages you. And it might be taking inspiration from other people at first. Find out how other people get inspired. But slowly you'll tune it to yourself. Slowly you'll find out what actually makes you happy and engaged and ready for life. So give it a try at least. You never know what you'll find out. All the best, and we'll catch you on the next one.